right, third grade. So the next step of your shoe project after you have all of your lines and details drawn in is to start adding value. Now value is how much you have of something. Now in art it's how much you have of a light or dark value. So if you look at this worksheet I have here, this would be a dark value and it gets lighter as it goes down. And here we have a gradient. Now I will put this worksheet online so you may print it out. If you don't have ability to print it, you can just get a plain piece of paper and just make a couple boxes. So you might have 1, 2, 3, 4 lines, so you end up with 5 boxes. So practice making a variety of values. So to make a really dark value, what you're going to do is to take your pencil and apply heavier pressure. You might go over it a few times to get a little bit darker value. Hopefully I'm not shaking the camera too much. You want to press really hard to get a dark value. You can also crisscross another direction to get it darker again. So it's all about how much pressure you use with your... When to get a darker value, you want to make sure you have your pencil held lower, a normal grip. On my next value, I want to make a little bit lighter, so I'm not going to press quite as hard. It's still dark, but not quite as dark. And then kind of work your way down, and I'll put it into time lapse. All right, so when you get towards the end, you're gonna go as light as you possibly can, where you're just about tickling the paper. Now the second part I'd like you to do is try doing a gradient. So a gradient goes gradually from one value to another. So I'm just gonna press really hard, and as I get further away, I'm gonna ease up on how hard I press. So it gradually is gonna get lighter and lighter and lighter. It just kind of fades away to nothing. If you have to come back to darken up some areas, you can do that. So that's called a gradient. We're gonna be using this for our shoe. So the next step of your shoe project is to take a look at your shoe and try to figure out if you have a dark value, medium, or light. So if you have a really dark shoe, like a black shoe, you're probably gonna make it more in the darker range. I would not suggest making your shoe completely black, otherwise you're not gonna see any of your details. Now, for instance, my shoe here, it's so big it won't even fit, but you can see it's pretty dark, but there are still some darker areas. For instance, like this is obviously a lot darker than that. Underneath I have some dark areas, and this is also pretty dark, pretty dirty, but that's how it is. You also can see some lighter values, lighter grays. So everything, even though it's black, you might still have some different values of gray. So I'm just going to start by taking my pencil, and instead of using crayons or colored pencils to color, we're going to use regular pencil. Now you still want to be careful when you color. I'm just going to put down a base layer of color, of gray. You can always make it darker, but you can make it lighter. It's a little bit more difficult because you might end up erasing part of your detail. So I usually try to make the edges a little bit darker, work my way in. Now if I look at the line that I have here, is much darker, so I want to make sure I really get in there with my pencil and get those dark values dark. And I can ease up on my pressure a little bit, so it's going to end up looking more gray. Now I do have some shiny spots on there as well, so if you have a shiny spot, that might be a lighter value. Alright, so I'm not going to do my whole entire shoe. I'll put it in time lapse a little bit. But right in here, if you're not sure if it's darker or lighter, squint at it, then you might be able to pick out some of the values. So I think it's a little bit darker inside that groove, where light isn't going to hit it. Anywhere you see like a darker area, just press a little bit harder with your pencil. Now, I didn't have this exactly like my shoe, but that's okay. No one's gonna be able to tell. It's all about observation. What you see might be different than what the camera sees. Now this is a brown, so I think that my perspective here, this is a little bit darker. So I press a little bit harder on that edge. So I want this part to pop up and come forward. So I'm going to outline that and just kind of fade it in with my gray. And don't worry if you have scratchy or pencil lines. You still want to color slowly enough so you don't have a lot, but we'll be showing you a technique on how to smooth out your pencil drawings. And right down in here, I think it's really dark, so I have to press a little bit harder. Now this tan paper, the manila paper, is pretty soft. So you do want to be careful not to press too hard that you tear a hole through your paper. I'm going to press a little bit harder down the corner. And really get the edges dark. So in the crevices, the light isn't going to hit, so it's going to be a little bit darker. All right, I'm just going to finish up this smaller section here. All right, so I have a section of the shoe shaded in. Right now you can see a lot of my pencil lines. So we're gonna be doing some blending. Now ideally I'd be using something called a blending stump, which is a rolled up piece of paper, but most of you probably don't have those at home. So we're just gonna use tissue, and I can use my finger, just kind of wrap it in there, and just really gently go over your pencil with the tissue, and that will kind of smooth out some of those charcoal lines. Now you do be really careful you don't go on top of your smaller details. If you rub on it, it's going to smooth them out and smudge them. So you're going to end up having to go back and darken up your lines, which is okay. Just so you have to kind of keep that in mind. You don't just go very crazy and smudge all your details out. So here I can darken it in a little bit, smooth it out, so I get more of that smooth shoe texture instead of seeing the scratchy pencil lines. Now as you smudge it, it's going to remove the pencil, so you're going to have to come back and darken things up again to get it back to that value that you might want. Some people also are taking a pencil and then wrapping the eraser end around it, and you have a little better precise tool than your fingers, a little skinnier. Up here it's pretty dark, but I wanted to keep that highlight in there, so I'm leaving that white area. Now if you accidentally smudge out too much, you can always take your eraser and then clean out any smudge marks. And again, you're going to have to probably darken things up. But do be careful, because as you rub on the paper, it's going to make it a little bit more weak, and it could possibly tear. So you have to be really careful not to tear your paper. So you have to make sure you really get in there with your details. Make them a little darker so they show up. And apply a lot of pressure to get that darker value. Now underneath your shoe, you're going to want to make a shadow. So I'm going to press really, really hard. As I work my way towards me, away from the shoe, my shadow's going to get lighter and lighter. So it kind of fades with like that gradient we practiced in the beginning. So get really, really dark underneath that whole length of the shoe. And go medium to light. Again, it looks kind of scratchy right now. We'll take our tissue and kind of blend it out. Now you don't want to use your finger without a tissue, because your fingers have oils on it and it will does not blend as well. You can actually get little prints. So you can start to see my shoe actually looks like it's sitting on something, which makes it look more real. So no light's going to get underneath my shoe. Now if your shoe is white, you can take like a white colored pencil, or if you happen to have it, a white charcoal pencil, but most of you probably won't have that. You can color in the white areas white. Or for any really big shiny areas, you might color those in white as well. So my shadow gets really, really dark underneath and then kind of fade it away. So dark to medium to light. Now I'll take my tissue and blend that out. So just keep on applying pressure. Goes from dark to medium to light. You do that on the whole edge of the shoe. All right, I'm gonna stop here and put this into time lapse so we can watch the shoe be completed. All right, third grade, so once you have completed shading everything in, make sure you sign your work in the bottom corner. You can upload it to Artsonia. Just a couple other notes, before you turn it in, you may want to re-outline your edges so everything pops out real nice. So tip is to hold it out from a distance. If it looks kind of foggy, you may want to sharpen up your edges. If you over smudge it, you can always use an eraser to clean up any extra lines you have on the outside edges. Hope you had fun drawing your shoes. I know I did. So looking forward to seeing your work. Have a great day.